Good morning, everyone. My name is Wyant, and I am from the state of Minnesota. And shoot, I was going to show you my wife sent me a picture of our daughter's car out in the front of the street, completely covered in snow, with eight inches of snow on the ground. And she's like, "Why are you out of town? You should be shoveling the snow." Sorry, I'll have to make up for it somehow when I get back. Good. No, so I'm here to talk about managing up and setting priority. And no, I did not have the opportunity to confer with any of the other presenters. Everything seemed to be tied together really well. The stuff that I decided to talk about is a really nice match with a lot of the other stuff everybody else is talking about, which is awesome. So I'm going to be talking about this, managing up. How many of you think that I'm going to provide you with a one-size-fits-all set of directions that you take home? I got a good audience here. So I'm going to do my best to make this an interactive event, tailoring what I'm going to tell you and based on what you're going to tell me about who you are, okay? Now, most of us who speak at conferences, including myself, have a set of 2 or 3 presentations that we tend to modify and use every time. This is the first time I've done this. So I'm going to need your help in making this a success. So please help me. We can make it a successful presentation with your help. And so here we're going to go now. So next slide. I have a lot of information to share, and I have a lot of opinion. After all, I've been in this business for over 30 years. And 12 years as the Chief Information Accessibility Officer for the state of Minnesota. There are many approaches to the organization and accessibility champion. So what I'm going to talk about today, you're going to tailor to who you are and your role in the organization you work with. Now, Devin and others yesterday highlighted that reality in their presentation yesterday and to this morning, in that there's not always one right way, one right approach to do things, except for, of course, tagging. Tagging, you got to do it one way, which is great. I'm going to encourage other stories. And then after we're done, as Rob indicated yesterday, I'd like you all to identify maybe who else in raising your hand when I'm talking said the same thing. And maybe you could talk about collaborating and how to improve your processes or share notes. So I'm going to ask you all to point your phone to the QR code. And for those of you who can't point your phone, I'll give you the opportunity to raise your hand and say something. So that way we'll try to be as inclusive as we can. Now, would you give me an answer? And I'm going to get off my slide after this and find the result. Or if you download my presentation and you have your computer, the link is on the presentation. You can click on that link as well. '68 responses. Man, you guys are quick. Let's see. More, okay. 27 of you in higher ed, 11 in K-12, 16 state agencies, no count, like one county, no county, no city, 2 large corporations, 3 small businesses, 6 nonprofits. We got a good range here, and 3 others. So we got a lot of higher ed here. That's good to know. Some state agencies, which is like me. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. Here we go. Next question, how mature is your accessibility program? So I'll ask you one more time to tell me maturity level. We got 58, so we got 10 more to go so far. We're all over the board here. That's pretty cool. From C17, just getting started. 10 have a policy or standard, but not much in the way of resources. That's 11 now. 12 have resources assigned and some programs in place at a low level of maturity. 10 have been working on accessibility for some years with some mature programs and practices. and 12 have had dedicated accessibility resources and their teams in place for years. Wow. And then those who could not take a picture or show not TV, will raise your hand with the finger for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If anybody needs that method to tell me what they are. All good. Okay, thank you. This is great information. Wow. Okay, now back to the slides. And then I could start talking some, so kind of remember more. So let's talk about roles. I've got here on the slide 2 people pointing fingers at each other, which is what happens a lot when you're dealing with accessibility, saying, that's somebody else's job. So in my office, the Office of Accessibility for the state of Minnesota, we are housed inside of Minnesota IT Services, or META for short. There was some reason for that. Our office was created the same year that the state passed a law consolidating all of the IT organizations. At that time, every agency had their own IT department. So they consolidated all the IT department to a centralized organization. Then they put us inside that, which made sense. But accessibility is not an IT issue. And anybody who tells you that accessibility is an IT issue is wrong. It is one of the IT is a contributor to accessibility, but so are all the people who are not IT. The people, for example, who make decisions on what to buy, like I need to buy this software, or I need to buy this resource, or I need to build this tool. That's usually not IT. That's what we call business. And business needs to make accessibility decisions before they talk to the IT people, or while they're talking to the IT people. So it's everybody's responsibility. And besides, who in IT writes Word documents? So everything that Shad just talked about is usually by people who aren't in IT. So when you talk about buy-in, or getting buy-in for accessibility, you can't just point at one group and say, they got to buy in because it's their job. Actually, we all have to buy in because it's all of our jobs. It's everybody's responsibility. And that's one of the messages that you're going to have to try to get out to your audience and your teammates and your manager, your leadership, that accessibility is everyone's responsibility. So I asked about a policy, and other people have talked about policy. Ideally, one of the first things any organization should have is to have a policy. Okay? The challenge is to have a policy requires leadership buy-in. So maybe you had a grassroots accessibility program going on, and you don't have a policy because you have not yet gotten the leadership buy-in. Then does not mean you should stop. You should keep doing what you're doing, but then start having a policy as one of your next major goals. As you're building and doing a grassroots thing, think about, okay, yeah, we got to have a policy. How are we going to get there? And you can start making a plan for how to get there. Now, having a policy is not the same thing as having an accessibility statement. Sometimes you'll see that on the website, an accessibility statement. We have one on ours. An accessibility statement is more about what you're going to do if somebody finds issues with your website or your document or whatever. They have a point of contact. An accessibility statement can also point to and reference your policy, which is great if you have one. Okay? Now, why do you need to have a policy? You need to have a policy because number one, it indicates the leadership behind it. You can't publish the policy without your executive signature on it. That's number one. Number two, it then drives all the action. Now, Devin talked about bottom up and top down. You need both. But a lot of the top-down action is the process and the procedures that you are building or already have built in your organization, and now you're codifying it. So have your policy start driving that. So there's a whole other conversation about how to make a policy and what the right way to make a policy, and I'm not going to talk about that right now, but we'll say keep it really simple. Things change over time. You don't want to have to keep rewriting your policy. So make it fairly simple, make it fairly straightforward, a statement of intent, a statement of roles and responsibility, and then give it room to then build processes and procedures to support that policy. So, like I said, ideally you should have a policy. Let's say you still think we had that as a goal. Okay, now we know we have to have a policy. That's the first thing for leadership buy-in. But to get there, you want to get buy-in from everybody else. Somebody, I think yesterday, talked about policies, and they forget who talked about how they had to go around to every single stakeholder group. So there was the executive, there were the IT people, there were the ACC, there were the external stakeholders, and all of that came together to build a policy, so that takes time. When you do this, remember that accessibility is a journey. You want to play the long game, okay? You want to get there. So don't worry we don't have a policy today. Don't worry we don't have leadership buy-in today. You'll get there. You can't stop. You have to keep moving toward that goal. And what are you doing? You collect your allies, okay? Like a game of Risk. You want to build your allies. And then you want to set up and support your community to practice. That's something else that Devin and other people talked about yesterday. You get the community to practice together to actually build that culture and that process of accessibility. And then leverage your resource group. Okay, if you have a disability resource group, if you have any kind of resource group, leverage them. And then be consistent with your case. Figure out what your case is and repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over again. I've had people tell me, stop talking. I mean, they don't tell me to stop talking about it, but they say, we all know we need to be accessible, though. Why you keep telling us we need to be accessible? And I say, because I still keep finding things that are not accessible. I did a survey last year, and I found out that a lot of people in IT services didn't even think accessibility is part of their job. So I'm not going to stop talking about accessibility because it hasn't gotten through to everyone yet. There are 35,000 people who work for the state of Minnesota. So that's a lot. So when I say talking about it over and over and over again, people talk about building a business case for accessibility. And we've had a lot of conversations. I've come across a lot of conversations about if that's the right thing to say. A business case, you shouldn't have to say it's a business case because it's a civil right. Accessibility is a civil right. Repeat that to yourself. Accessibility is a civil right. And so you should have to make a business case for it. But there is value in talking about the advantages of supporting accessibility. It reduces waste, it increases efficiency, it makes things work better. Okay. Somebody talked about ARIA yesterday. Do you remember? Does anybody know what the first rule of ARIA is? So ARIA stands for accessible risk something interfaces. Accessible risk interfaces is something else. Everybody just knows the word ARIA. And if you happen to do any kind of code or deal with any kind of code and you open up code, you'll see sometimes a lot of ARIA because it became really popular and they started the framework started throwing ARIA into the framework system to kind of preempt stuff. And the reason why I bring that up is ARIA, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but ARIA trumps HTML. So you have an ARIA code, and you have HTML code. ARIA will run and HTML won't. So HTML is foundational to good, accessible information. So that's why we say don't use ARIA. Use the good HTML and make that work for you first. And only use ARIA when there's no other alternative. So good accessibility means good product. It makes products that are more future-proof. It makes products that don't have to be replaced as often. It makes products that are less expensive because you don't have to keep fixing things. So accessibility is actually a very good thing for an organization to adopt. And you can make a very strong case for that. You can point to a lot of examples for that. Look at the accessible PDF that Shasta talked about this morning. If you think about building the Word document accessibly from the beginning, and then you convert to PDF, all of a sudden you can have a lot of good use for that document. You can have, for example, table of content. You can't create a table of content without using style. So think about how accessibility makes things work better and more efficiently. And then my goal, accessibility is a lot like security. There's a lot of parallel between cybersecurity and accessibility. And we work very closely with our cybersecurity friends because we all use the same very similar practices. Accessibility reduces risk. The more you have, if you have a policy in place, if you have processes in place, if you have things that are accessible in place, you are going to reduce your organization's risk. How many of you think it's possible to have a 100% accessible website? If you didn't hear what you said, that it has more than one page here, right? If you have a web page, you can make it accessible. Yes, you have a one document on one site, yes. But you're talking about like the state of Minnesota, we have 5 million web pages. So we're saying you can't be perfectly accessible. What are we doing then? What are we talking about here? We're talking about removing barriers. Okay, so instead of trying to go over 100% compliant, what you're looking for is, we use the WCAG criteria to identify and help us to find, identify, and fit potential barriers so that anybody can access that information. That's what we're talking about, not these little teensy-beensy one-off, two-off things that are not fully compliant, but don't really do much to block anybody from doing anything, okay? An empty link, for example, okay, there's a hassle, leave the chip like password. A submit button that you can't tab to, that's the problem, okay? You got a submit button and you cannot tab to that submit button. That means you can fill out a form and can't do anything with it. That's a barrier. So we're trying to eliminate these barriers. We're reducing our risk, okay? So just like we can't be 100% cyber secure, we can't be 100% accessible. We'll try to get there as good as we can, but we're going to focus our effort on reducing our risk by making things work. Okay? So when we talk about this, don't worry, I'm leading about how to manage up. So we're trying to think about how are we explaining to our executives and our leaders. By the way, who here is in charge of the organization? Oh, she's in charge. Okay, great. So I'm speaking to an audience that got people above them. You got to think about, okay, what are the reasons why we're justifying our time here? These are the things I'm telling you about. All right. So, and if all else fails, you can send this fencer out to the miscreant. So you got somebody behind you with a sword. I'm going the wrong way. So now I'm going to ask you to take a moment, click on this QR code, and the question is, what is the biggest challenge facing your accessibility program? Number one, just one. System. So you gotta think about it for a minute. I'll give you a few moments to think about it. So we have lack of leadership buy-in, support. We have a lot of subject matter expert created content between other responsibilities that they see accessibility, something that takes too much time to learn and do. That'd be nice to do in theory, but we don't have time and just need to get resources out quickly. Totally get that. Awareness, buying from higher up, training, culture change, not having enough people on the team, time, budget, limited resources, training people, time, budget. Buying from leadership due to burnout on a lot of priority, time and resources, understanding the process. Academics who don't care about accessibility. Okay. Engagement, lack of knowledge and leadership buy-in. I'm going to get too fast. Our IT department think they know about accessibility, but they define an ability to ask that. Ooh, and don't take disability into consideration. You've been fighting it for 10 years. Training, structure, compliance, not enough people know about it. Facility, time, manpower, buying time and resources. Patient form, ooh, big problem. Mindset shift. Okay, so we're getting a lot of things about time, money, resources. Okay, let's see, we go back to the current slide. All right, so I'm gonna address those and talk about those in a minute. But first, we do this slide. How many of you have seen the mnemonic A11Y? Are you all familiar with that? A11Y? In other words, the word accessibility is a 13-letter word. So we had the A, and we had the Y, and then we had the 11 in the middle. So it's a wonderful 11, A11Y. Accessibility, so my question is, what are your resources? You need the accessibility people, and you need money. So no two ways about it. You're gonna need money. Lucy, you have your hand up. Can you please give Lucy a microphone?
I think all of the things that are listed there come from teaching leadership and the people at the bottom what it is and what's needed. You're not going to get the time, you're not going to get the money, you're not going to get the resources unless you educate everyone in the institution from the bottom up and the top down. Your CIO won't know what accessibility is. You have to teach them.
Which is exactly why the topic today is managing up. You got to be able to get those resources in place. So you got your dedicated team of people who are working hard to make things happen, to scramble, to pack together resources. You got your developer, like this person said, who said, yeah, we know I'm supposed to do this, but I have no time to train. I have no time to learn this stuff. So just like Lucy said, we need to make that time to do the training. We need, as somebody pointed out yesterday, you can have people who know how to make things accessible, but if you have not changed the workflow, the process, they're not going to have time or resources to do what they do to make things accessible. The deadline is still getting out the door. I'm not saying that making things accessible necessarily takes more time, but it takes a shift in how you do things. So for example, like if you're writing or developing something, if you do development and you hand off, then you are not going to find time to test your development work. So you need to rejiggle and reorganize how you plan out a project or how you plan out a process and make sure that accessibility is considered in each step of the process rather than shift it to the right and at the end where they figure out whether or not it's accessible. So accessibility itself may or may not take more time, except for the training, you need to learn how to do it. But it takes a reorganization of how you organize, how you make things. So for example, somebody made a Word document, converts it to a PDF, and then somebody told fix it to make it accessible. Instead of saying, make a Word document, test it, fix it, then make the PDF. Okay? So you have the team working together, you have the team thinking of what to do, and you need to make that money happen. So that's why it's so important to manage up. So now we got people working together. We got people saying we got to get our leaders to buy in. That's when you start organizing your priorities. You start saying, okay, first of all, where should we, the accessibility people, be? You should be everywhere, right? You should be all over the place. But if you can have, you should ideally have some main points of contact. Like we have an Office of Accessibility for the state of Minnesota, 35,000 employees, 75 plus agencies, boards, and commissions, and an Office of Accessibility of 3 people. So we're not going to solve everybody's problem with 3 people. But what we do and what we are is a group of people who then share information, resources, process, guidance, training to all the accessibility people at all the agencies. We got all the agencies to have digital accessibility coordinators at the agency who are then working with their leadership and their people to get the operations in place with their staff. So we're 3 people, but we're a network of hundreds of people. We built that network over time, okay? So people know they can come to us. We have our name, we have our website, and everything goes in place. But that doesn't mean we do all the work. There's lots of other people who do all the real work. And make sure people understand that. So where are you? Where does your organization sit? Where can you have the most impact? So think about that as a priority. What are your external pressures? Okay. You ideally, the way we have accessibility state in Minnesota is that the disability community got the legislature to pass a law in 2009. That was the big driver for us. That made a big difference. And then tying in opportunities. The state of Minnesota, speaking of logos that we talked about this morning, the state of Minnesota went through a rebranding effort because every agency had their own brand. So we had 50 different websites with 50 different logos and brands and layouts and everything. No one knew what the state of Minnesota was. So we came up with the brand, MN, logo, and not accessible, but that's okay. And what we did, we leveraged that. We said, here's an opportunity. So we created, with a lot of time and a lot of collaboration with all the agencies, accessible Microsoft Word template with the brand on it. And because we did a part of the branding effort, we had one set of templates for everyone. All these agencies had to do was switch out their own special logo. You have an MN logo for Minnesota, you have a Minnesota IT Services, you have a Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services. Just pop that in, the colors are the same, the layouts are the same, everything's the same. And then we put that into Microsoft Word and into PowerPoint. So when you open Word, the branded stuff is there, not Microsoft templates. Our agency templates are built into Word. So that way we thought about, we were able to work with the communication team, the branding team, and us. If we told them it's a great advantage, it's a great opportunity, so that nobody has to go to a SharePoint document or some other place and download a template and then mess that template up because you've changed the template itself rather than making it a document. I mean, that happens a lot. So those are the tie-in opportunities you want to think about. How can we take our tiny little group of accessibility people that tie in to a branding effort, to an outreach effort, to a communication effort, and then you start building that program. Okay, so that's what worked for us. But document was the need that everybody had. So that was also, people talk about website, very important, but everybody made documents. Documents were what we call a low-hanging fruit. So we focused on documents first. And we had a number of very passionate document creators. And that was the other thing, to be tied into an aesthetic passion, where we found people who cared about accessible document. And you work with them first to build that branded document that was accessible, and then to create training for how to make accessible document, training for how to make accessible PDF, which are free and public on our website. So you could come to our website and take our training. It's right there. And by doing that, we were able to seed and grow accessibility because a lot of people make Microsoft Word documents. And those documents eventually get published as legislative reports or other document team reports or things like that that have to be published somewhere. So we tied into that. We got those passionate early adopters to rally around a few key activities. Okay? So to go back to, we did that. By doing that, by tying to our people, to the passionate people we got a lot of visibility. As we became more visible, ACT started acknowledging people are doing something good here. And those people then kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Accessibility is a civil right. Accessibility makes things work better. Accessibility makes things last longer. It saves you money. It saves you time. We keep repeating the same basic fundamental over and over again. So I'm just talking about the challenge comments you guys had. Would anybody like to, if I have not said anything that really helped you think about your issue, raise your hand. I'd love to hear about it. And we can talk about it for a couple of minutes. I've got some time. If we got people hitting with their magic stick. Anybody have anything they want to share? Any problem? You get a free handout, by the way. I've got some really cool quick cards right here. So if you see something, you get one of these. You're holding out. You think you get them later, huh? Okay, we got a handout.
I think, oh, thank you. Oh, I really did get a present. I thought that was just bait. I think some of what we deal with a lot, I'm with the Department of Rehab Services, and is making sure that accessibility is our first thought and not our last thought. So a lot of people think about it, but they come at it too late. So setting them up so that their first instinct is to make sure it's accessible first would be a better way. That's the biggest challenge for us, I think, right now.
So thinking about managing up on that, if you ask your supervisor, when that happens, when they come back and fix it later, if you ask your supervisor, how much time do you have to spend on that? Would you have preferred that we didn't have to spend that time on that? If we think about accessibility first, think about how much time you would have saved for other activities. So again, it's an efficiency thing. Because most of you work for a public entity, an agencies and higher ed were the top two groups. And you are governed by the ADA, and you are governed by 504. And the ADA and 504 make accessibility a civil right. It's not something that's made up out of whole cloth. You have specific things to point to that say you got to do this. And yes, you're wasting time doing it at the end. My God, taxpayer dollars. Come on. So you think about those and and again, it's not about getting mad at the supervisors or anything like that. It's about quietly repeating it over and over again.
So I actually have a lot of support from my managers and directors, but currently I'm really the only person in my institution who's really focusing energy on this. And I have a lot of grand plans for what I'd like to do, but my biggest challenge right now is actually figuring out how to pace myself so that I don't like burn out by trying to do too much at once all by myself.
Why is it just you?
Other people say they don't have time.
So what are they asking you to do? Are they saying fix my document for me? Are they saying fix my website for me? What do you actually have to do?
Well, the thing is, I'm not really being asked to do things. It's just important to me, and I'm volunteering to take things on.
But you say you have support from your management.
Yes,
To do what?
to update things on the website, to train people.
Okay, so in other words, your management says yes. If people are willing to be trained, you're allowed to have time to train them. The challenge is getting people in the room to take the training, which means their manager
Right.
need to tell them to take your training. So you need to work with your manager to say, talk to the other manager and say, hey, I've got this resource here. But you have to use that resource.
Yes.
So it's not just managing up, it's getting your manager to manage up and out.
Right. That makes sense. Thanks.
I'm brilliant. Okay.
So I am very new to having to understand the accessibility. world. And so I feel like my biggest challenge is that because I'm so new, I have like the little bitty questions, you know, that not the big, huge overall cloud questions, you know? And so it's like to find the resources to be able to answer as I'm trying to create a document or a website or this or that. I have to like really figure out and dig deep to find the answers for that. And so I think that I've also noticed since I've gotten into the accessibility world that in my daily life, I'm not seeing all of the things. And so it's hard to learn to be able to use it in my work life too, to make things accessible for the people that really need it. And so I guess for me, the challenge is, I guess, the lack of knowing where to go for all of these questions, because one question leads to 10 more. And so that's where, and although our, you know, my organization does their best to try to plug me in the right place, it's like, okay, that answers the big burning question, but not the 2,500 others.
So you have challenge of scale. You're trying to say, I'm one person, I'm doing this and this and this and this and this and this and this. Is that what you really should be doing, or should what? So let's go back to what Devin was talking about the other day, where they created that community, right? So that you have things to bounce off of. Not only created that community, but then coalescing that community around some common thing. So I was talking about priorities earlier. So you try to solve document problems, you try to solve website problems, you try to solve process problems, and you try to, that's too many problems. Bring down to your priority level, what's the thing that is hitting you the most? Are you being asked to make a lot of documents? Okay, let's focus on that. Or are you being asked to help redesign the website? Okay, let's do that. And that's the other tie-in part. Maybe the website is not due for redesigning for 4 more years. Okay, well, put that aside and try to figure out something you can have an impact on. That's number one. Two, the resources. Well, like I said, you got the quick card, so that means on our website, you can see training for how to make Microsoft Word documents accessible, how to make PDFs accessible, how to make maps accessible. We have all how to make data visualizations accessible. That's all there on our website. So you have some starting point there. But that's the basic 101 stuff. I really recommend joining the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, or IAAP, okay? The good organization, you can use IAAP International. I spoke too fast, I'm sorry, I got really excited. International Association of Accessibility Professionals, IAAP. It's internationalassociation.org, I think. Just search for IAAP and put accessibility in the search and you'll find it. You can get an individual membership, or if you can persuade a manager to get an organizational membership, even better. And what that does is that plugs you into a network of free webinars that you could take and start building that. You could also be a way to plug into their certification program, where you get certified as an accessibility professional. We have a certified professional over there that got a whole bunch of certificates, and we have a couple of other IAP certificates as well, I'm sure, like right over here. A former member of the governing council as well. So that's the way to kind of focus on what you have to learn, because you have support from your supervisor to learn this stuff. The other thing is, and that's where tech access okay comes in play, is that there's a network of, help me out here, it's the Great Lakes, if you search for Great Lakes ADA, Great Lakes ADA has a webinar series on accessibility webinar that they tie in with both the U.S. Access Board, with Govern 508, and other programs as well, and that's free. You just have to find it and then sign up for the newsletter, and they'll get it, and they'll get regular webinars from Great Lakes ADA. And they're part of the network of AT organizations throughout the country. Okay, that's another resource. So IAP, Great Lakes ADA, and if anybody else has anybody else who did not put here has a recommendation, love to hear from them. but that's where you get started, to start absorbing that fire hose. The World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, they're the ones that own the WCAG 2.1, 2.2, and so forth. So the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C.org, search for the Web Accessibility Initiative, or WAI. So search for W3C and then WAI. You get that. They have a series of programs there to also provide you the basic fundamentals of accessibility as well. But want to be very, very careful, because the W3C, WAI is massive. And if you start opening you put your mouth on that fire hose, you will not be able to breathe for several weeks. So be very careful, go in there and just look carefully at what it is and start learning bits and pieces from it, okay? The other thing that I gave you a little more targeted, a little easier to get started with. So now that I've given you that information, you want to share that with your colleagues. You want to start meeting every week, or every month. If you have to have a monthly meeting once a month, to say, what have you learned so far? What have you learned that you can share with us? What have you learned that you can share with us? So you're collaborating and sharing from the bottom up, okay? Now, so the collaboration and sharing the bottom up work, but the managing up is important, because you and your colleagues need to be allowed the time to go learn. We're not talking Sunday morning. We're talking during your working hours. All right? You deserve to be paid for learning what you be doing on your job. Now, if you want to finish Saturday morning learning, that is fine. That's great. You're a go-getter. You have initiative. But you're going to burn out, because you got snow to shovel, at least I do. So get your manager up, you get your supervisor to agree, yeah, you should spend an hour a week or so taking these webinars, attending these meetings, and learning about your colleagues. Adam.
Just going to take a second to plug ourselves. If you have any questions about digital accessibility, please reach out to us at Oklahoma Able Tech as well. And especially if you're in Oklahoma, like, we are a good local resource for any accessibility questions. But yeah, like, definitely all of the, like, don't just come to us. Like, there's, lots of other resources available as well. So. No, never. I love weird questions. So, like, anything you guys can bring to me, it's good.
Wait, Glenda, you gotta talk to the microphone. And give her a card too.
We absolutely love simple questions. The things that land in my lap that are so complex, that take me hours and days and weeks to figure out, when you ask me something that I can just give you the answer, it makes me so happy.
Absolutely. Contact and thank you, Adam, for making sure that's why Tech asked us, okay, organize this conference. They are a great resource. They brought us here, they brought you here. You need to use them as much as possible. Okay? They're also connected with all the other things that I just talked about. You have a hand up over here.
Speaking of resources, what would you recommend for creating training documentation, particularly aimed at people who aren't overly comfortable technologically? Because in our case, we're kind of training people on how to manage their websites, kind of build it for them, and then let them take over authoring content. And if we can give them simple instructions, they typically will stick to it. But the moment we start trying to explain too deep, they kind of get this glossy look in their eyes.
Boy, that's a great question. And that's why, for example, when we started with documents, we started with something that was simple and easy and comprehensible to use, a 101 concept of document. Now you're talking about building websites for people and then teaching them how to use the website. What tools are you using to build a website? Are you using Drupal or? Adobe Experience Manager.
Yeah, Adobe's system.
Oh boy. That's a tough one. what I want to say is that okay, you're creating template.
Most of it we can handle on the backside of like making sure it's accessible as possible. But just for the content that they're entering, it'd be nice to write training for them that they can take and kind of keep in mind going forward.
Okay.
That's the main thing I'm concerned about.
That's good to know, because what I was saying, the ideal is that in the template where you add the content, it should tell them what heading level that is, for example. Because let's say the web page has a heading 1 and a heading 2, and you're putting in content that should be under heading 3. How do they know that it should be a heading 3? Is there a way for them to know that? So you need to have a way for them to identify the heading level that it should be, and then teach them what that means, what that heading level means. I really would suggest a very simple checklist. And a simple checklist that identifies, do you know your heading level? If you don't know your heading level, here's how to find it. Do you know the content framework, or the content type, like the P tag or bulleted list or number list? And how that, I'm assuming that is already read, that they simply put in the numbers or put in the bullet. And so there's a way to do that. And so they have to be reminded to create that structure. And plain language is a big deal. So maybe providing plain language training by yourself can be helpful, because that way they can start thinking about how to chunk their content in very manageable way, where you have a lot of bullets and a lot of numbers and a few paragraphs. I'm not sure that helps you a lot, but the main thing is try to find very simple ways to provide checklists to help them identify where they are and what they need to do in that experience manager. And if it's all possible, having content in the space where they have to do it, telling them what to do. So you can think about, if there's a way to create a template that tells them in the template, do this and then delete me. When we didn't think about that. The handout that you just got is, it may give you some ideas on how to highlight some key points and making your own handout for that kind of thing. I hope that helps. Anybody else? Okay, I've got a few minutes left, so I'll wrap up, and I'll be here all day. So you guys will come back to me with a question. So let's go back to the slide. Yeah, we're down here, don't work anymore. So overcoming objection. So you're managing up. You're talking to people. You need to buy into what you're doing. And I have two columns here. On the left column are the objections, on the right column are some suggestion answer. So I don't have time to do this, or I don't know anyone who needs this, or we don't have enough resources. How many of you said that? We have other priorities, like say cybersecurity is more important, or you go right ahead, dear. Pat you on the head. How many times you had that happen? Where they say you go right ahead, be a good little accessibility person. Okay. So the answer to those are partly ways. Most of you are government, like I said earlier. We're not government for some people. We're government for everyone. That's why we use the term residents, not citizens. We are government for everyone. Okay, so if it doesn't work for some of them, we're not doing our job. And if you're a school, well, who are students? You will and you do have tickets to 504 people with disabilities as students. And you can't wait until they join the class before you have to make the class material accessible. It's too late by then. Okay, and if you're a business, well, who are you selling to? Hopefully you're not just selling to the few people. You're selling to anybody and everybody who wants to buy your stuff. And if you're a nonprofit, well, of course, is inclusion your mission? I don't think so. And then for all of you, think about accessibility as future-proofing of technology in the cheapest, easiest, most efficient way possible. So if they say you go right ahead there, then that means you go right ahead and start building that managing up network. Make it happen. Make it easy. Put an easy button on this page. So that goes to what you're trying to do over there, is make it easy. You don't want them to have to think too hard to make it accessible. You want them to easy. The moment you tell them it's hard, they're going to give up, right? So instead of you slicing and dicing yourself into 500 different pieces, trying to do everything for everyone else, maybe the priority number one is What can I do to make one step or the second step easy for everybody else and get them to buy into that one step or two step and do that. When they see that it's easy and it gets results, like adding an alt text to a picture. Oh my God, that was fun. Let's do it again. I mean, once you get them to do that, they start realizing that it's not that hard, that they want to do it again, and they want to do more, okay? So think about doing brown bags and free training, make yourself available. See, so again, instead of trying to do everything for everybody else, offer your knowledge and other people can do more, okay? Think about free language, the tools. Most testing tools are free to start with. So it's free already. Wave is free, Axe is free, don't glad at that. And everything else is free, okay? And then we built our training, we made it free. But we had money for that. So you have to get the money to make it free for everybody else. That could be a challenge. Now you talk about step-by-step instruction. Keep it really simple, use plain language. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, and then you build that network of resources. And I cannot say enough about templates. So I'll give you my example as you did here. So let's see, I'm gonna, by the way, Alt tab is one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. I can pick what I need to do real quick. So I'm gonna open up a Word document. So I'm opening up Word. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Go to File. I'm gonna go to New. And I go to our templates here. These are all my templates. They're all accessible. They're built right in there. I'm not getting Microsoft templates. I'm getting ours. That's easy. So there's no excuse for anyone in the state of Minnesota who works with the agency to have an inaccessible document from the beginning. They must ensure that the only way they get a logo, a document, a logo on it, is to use an accessible template. You build that into it. Okay. Now, all that said, I didn't say make it easy for you. I'm sorry, but you are going to have to work on it. So your work, your focus is to make it easy for everyone else. And then it becomes easier for you because you no longer have to do all that work because other people are doing that work. And communicate, which leads to this slide. I've been in my office, I've been the Chief Information Accessibility Officer since 2012. What I've done for all those years, I've stirred the pot. I keep stirring the pot. I don't stop. I keep stirring that pot, which means I keep talking about it. I keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over again until they're sick of it. But that means they've heard it. Okay, and they keep hearing it. And they finally let me do something about it. Okay, so think about your job of stirring that pot. And you keep working on the same thing and stirring it over and over and over again. Okay. Now, very briefly, I have 2 minutes. Procurement is the government word. I never knew the word procurement until I worked for the state of Minnesota. But it's a very important word. Because you pointed out you have Adobe Experience Manager. If you had to do it all over again, would you buy Adobe Experience Manager? I'm not making you answer that question. The key is we want to make sure that the technology you buy gives you the best opportunity to make accessible technology. Because most of you are not going to be coding from ground up. Most of you are not going to be doing your HR system from ground up. You are buying your HR system. You are buying your financial management system. You're buying the website development system. So you want to make sure that you build into your system with the help of your procurement folk, the requirement to make those accessible. So that means networking with whoever's in charge of buying stuff for your organization. That's again managing up because probably not you talking to them, maybe your manager or your boss, talking with the procurement people. Okay, but they need to include in their RFP or in their purchasing order the requirement that it may be accessible to the greatest extent possible so that you can have something to work with that's accessible. Okay, And don't just forget about, don't, you buy the technology, but make sure that the technology is not only the technology is accessible, but if it's output, it's a report, a PDF, or something else, that output can be accessible from the get-go rather than you have to fix it all over again. You have to expand that concept. You should have an acceptance process in place. In other words, okay, it's not accessible. What does that mean? That doesn't mean they got a jail-free card. That means that whoever made the decision to buy it should acknowledge through an exception that, yes, I bought something that's not accessible, and I, in my organization, accept that risk. Because you have created a risk. You have created a vulnerability for your organization to require people to use technology that's not accessible. Like in the state of Minnesota, we have a governor's executive order that really increase the hiring of people with disabilities in state government. But if you hire somebody with a disability and you put them to work on a tour that's not accessible, that person got to leave, and you're wasting money and time and that person's livelihood. So we create a risk. So the point of an exception is not, okay, don't worry, it's not accessible, but you have an exception. Yes, you bought something that's not accessible. Now you have to know what risks you may have on that. That's important. Okay? So you should co-listen if you want to feel about this. Don't, if a vendor tells you, nobody ever brought up accessibility to me before, they're lying. If they're selling to you, they're selling to other higher ed, other states, other nonprofits, other businesses. Okay? Make sure everybody knows about it. And like I said, it's a risk management program. So what else? I'm out of time. I'm sorry. So I'm going to move on to, the message is, nobody likes compliance. The compliance is the law, the rule, everything else. Nobody likes it. So don't talk about compliance. Talk about making it work for everybody. People buy into that. People buy into the message, making it work for everybody. And compliance is a tool for that. We have a great newsletter. Please subscribe to it. Just download the PDF from the 2025 session on the Tech.OK website. We have a link to it. Subscribe to it every month. And I really appreciate the feedback. Please. I know they have a feedback card, but that's for those folks. I want your feedback from me. So please take a moment for the QR code and tell me what you thought about, what you just heard for the last hour. And I hope it was interactive that I couldn't make it. And we have lots more of these quick cards, or even if you did not speak, you get a quick card. So to come over to me at the table over there and grab one for me. I don't want to take these home, please. My suitcase is so light now, I love it. So please come over and grab one of these. They're also available on our website as PDFs, accessible PDFs, of course. So thank you very much.